The emergency HOA meeting that evening felt like a tribunal designed specifically for Karen's public execution. She sat in the community center's front row, wearing her most authoritative blazer and clutching a manila folder thick with printed screenshots, noise ordinance research, and a timeline of every complaint she'd filed in the past 18 months. Her strategy was simple: overwhelm them with evidence of her dedication to community standards, and somehow make them forget about her own violation. The first item on tonight's agenda, Bob announced to the packed room, is the dual noise complaints filed today between residents of Maple Drive. A ripple of anticipation ran through the crowd. Karen had made enough enemies over the years that half the neighborhood had shown up just to watch her squirm. She spotted Mrs. Chen in the third row, arms crossed and glaring like a disappointed grandmother. The Johnsons sat near the back, looking confused but determined. "I've been protecting this community's peace and quiet for 3 years," Karen began, standing without being called upon. "One minor oversight with my volume settings doesn't erase my track record of keeping our property values high and our neighborhood standards intact." "Minor oversight?" called out Tom Johnson from the back. "Karen, your meditation bureau was so loud my kids thought there was a spiritual emergency happening next door." Laughter erupted throughout the room. Karen's cheeks flushed crimson, but she pressed on. "At least my content was educational. You were playing pop music that could corrupt young minds." "It was the soundtrack from Finding Nemo." Tom's wife Sarah chimed in. "We were having a kids' pool party." The laughter grew louder. Karen felt her authority slipping away like water through a broken dam. She'd spent years wielding the HOA rules like a sword, never imagining they could be turned against her. Ball consulted his tablet again. "According to our sound monitoring app, Karen, your speakers have exceeded acceptable levels on 17 different occasions over the past month, always during your meditation sessions." The number hit Karen like a physical blow. 17 times. She'd been the neighborhood noise villain for a month without realizing it. Every complaint she'd filed during that time now seemed like the height of hypocrisy. "I motion that we place Mrs. Whitmore on HOA probation," announced Mrs. Chen, her voice carrying the weight of long-suppressed frustration. "She can keep filing complaints, but only after her own property passes a noise inspection." The motion passed with a show of hands that looked like a forest of accusation. Karen sat in stunned silence as her neighbors, people she considered allies in the fight for community standards, voted to strip away her authority. As the meeting adjourned, Karen remained seated while the room emptied around her. Bob approached her with what might have been sympathy in his eyes. "Karen, maybe this is a chance to step back and think about what kind of neighbor you want to be," he said gently. She looked up at him, her perfect composure finally cracking. "I was trying to make our neighborhood better. I was trying to protect what we've built here." "I know," Bob said, "but maybe there's a difference between protecting something and controlling it." Karen walked home through the quiet streets, her manila folder hanging limp at her side. As she reached her front door, she could hear the faint sound of the Johnsons' pool filter humming in the distance. For the first time in years, the sound didn't fill her with righteous indignation. It just sounded like life happening. But as she turned her key in the lock, a new sound caught her attention. Music drifting from the direction of 38 Maple Drive. The Hendersons had never played music outside before, ever. Karen's eye began to twitch again as she wondered if her downfall had inspired others to test the boundaries she'd spent so long enforcing. The neighborhood's delicate balance of power was shifting, and she wasn't sure where she fit in this new world order. Karen Whitmore pressed her manicured finger against the window, so hard it left a smudge on the pristine glass. Across the cul-de-sac, her neighbor's pool party was in full swing at exactly 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. 17 minutes past the reasonable quiet hours she'd personally lobbied to include in the HOA handbook. What made her blood boil wasn't just the splashing and laughter, but the audacity of playing music at what she estimated to be at least 6.5 decibels above acceptable daytime levels. "Unacceptable," she muttered, grabbing her phone with the speed of a gunslinger. Her thumb flew across the screen as she typed her complaint to the HOA board. "Immediate violation occurring at 42 Maple Drive. Excessive noise pollution during designated quiet hours. requesting emergency intervention. She hit send with the satisfaction of a judge delivering a verdict, completely oblivious to the fact that her own outdoor speakers were currently blasting her meditation podcast at a volume that could wake the dead 3 streets over. 23 minutes later, Karen's doorbell rang with the persistence of a fire alarm. She opened it to find HOA President Bob Martinez holding a tablet and wearing the expression of someone who'd rather be anywhere else on earth. "Karen, we need to talk," Bob said, not waiting for an invitation before stepping inside. "I got your complaint about the Johnsons' pool party." Finally, I was beginning to think this HOA had gone completely soft on enforcement, Karen said, smoothing her pearl necklace with the confidence of someone who'd never been wrong about anything ever. Bob held up his tablet, showing a screenshot of her own backyard. "Karen, your speakers are registering at 78 decibels. The Johnsons are at 65. The words hit her like a slap from a wet pool noodle. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "That's impossible. My speakers are for educational content only. I'm listening to Mindful Moments with Miranda. It's practically therapeutic." "At a volume that's rattling Mrs. Chen's windows," Bob replied dryly. "She filed a complaint about you 20 minutes before you complained about the Johnsons." Karen felt her perfectly constructed world tilt sideways. She'd spent 3 years building her reputation as the neighborhood's moral compass, the guardian of property values, the keeper of community standards. Now she was being accused of the very crime she'd dedicated her life to fighting. "There must be some mistake," she stammered, but even as the words left her mouth, she could hear Miranda's voice drifting through her patio doors, cheerfully instructing everyone within a 2-block radius to breathe deeply and release all negative energy. Bob's tablet chimed with another notification. His eyebrows shot up as he read it. "Well, this is interesting. The Johnsons just filed a counter-complaint about your meditation music. They're saying it's disrupting their pool party." Karen's eye began to twitch, a nervous habit she thought she'd conquered through years of yoga and expensive therapy. Everything she'd worked for was crumbling faster than a sandcastle in a tsunami.